Okay, we're going to check this out. This is Adam DeGraff. And my name is Jose Omanis DeGraff. And that's it.
Okay, so we're going to have a little podcast here where we're going to talk to David DeGraff, my father. I'm Adam DeGraff. And we're going to talk to David about his history with self-help books, starting from, I would say, the 1970s, would you say?
60s.
60s?
1960s, yeah. 1962, I think.
So what was the earliest I remember growing up, I was born in 1968, so I remember the transactional analysis books.
Yeah.
So what predated those?
Transaction analysis books.
Oh, okay. So that started for you in the 60s.
So let me back up.
All right.
So as a kid, I had a very, I don't know if it was an unusual childhood, but there was a lot of trauma in my childhood. My dad was an alcoholic, and I don't think I got the best coping skills because of that. So I think I was always, as I grew up and when I was in high school, I was always looking for ways how can I cope better? And I ran across a book called Games People Play.
Because you didn't want to fall into the traps that your parents had, right? Is that?
I wasn't that conscious. I just knew it's painful. I had just broken up with my girlfriend.
You just wanted to get out of pain.
Yeah, basically. I figured there's got to be a way. That was before people had drugs that, for depression or those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran across this book, I can't remember how, but it was called Games People Play, and it was intriguing to me, and I started reading it. So it was really the first introduction I had to, that's the book, actually. I wonder what the
Eric Berne,
produced.
Games People Play.
Eric Berne. So for some reason that book intrigued me, the idea that we actually do those kind of things with each other. We play games. And Eric explained in the book why we play games. And so pretty intriguing, and if you want to know about that, you'll have to read the book.
And that was you probably found that because it was like a bestseller at the time, or?
Yeah, and just, intriguing. At the time, there wasn't anything out there like Games People Play. It was an intriguing title, intriguing idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to remember if it was the first thing. I think my first awakening to anything that affects how you think of the world, how you produce your thinking about the world, was when I read a book by Wayne Dyer called Your Erroneous Zones. And that was sort of a big aha for me because...
That was 60s also? Erroneous Zones?
That's what I don't remember. That was after that time. It was probably written in, I'm going to guess, 80s, sometime late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
So what was kind of blew my mind at the time of reading the book, has a lot of good information in it about how we think about the world. But he said a lot of people think they're going to be happier in the world if they just had enough money, or if they were just smart enough. And he says, I know a lot of people that have a lot of money are the most miserable people I know. I know people who are very brilliant who are the most miserable people I know. So he says it's really not having a lot of money. It's not really about being smart. Because I always thought if my IQ was just several points higher, I think I'd be better off. I just needed a little bit more because I wasn't quite getting over the wall to see reality, whatever that means. I didn't know. So, but he said what's important is your JQ, not your IQ. And what's a JQ? Well, he explained that really what's important is how much joy we have in our life, because we want a lot of money or we want to really be smart. Really what the need is is not for the money or not being smart. It's for how much joy. I mean, that's the bottom line. How much joy do we have in our life? How much serenity, how much peace, all those types of things. That's what we're really looking for when we're seeking money and whatnot. He said, so, instead of trying to make a lot more money, or instead of trying to think I should be smarter, think about what do I need to do to increase my joy quotient. In other words, go right for what you want instead of beating around the bush. Like in my case, when I went to college, I got a degree in accounting, and the reason I got the degree in accounting because I would make more money with an accounting degree. I didn't even think about how much joy I would have being an accountant. If I had, and I actually had done some work in the field before, I would have probably realized that's not where my joy comes from. So I spent a number of years, 15 years as an accountant, in a fairly joyless capacity. And of course, from that experience, I always told my 3 sons that the most important thing to do is to do what you love to do. That's what's really important. So anyway, so that was my first opening to starting to see how I could change my mind, my attitude, my perspective, reframe, whatever word you want to use, reframe my thinking to affect my happiness. And then there were several things along the way that also contributed that. I went to a workshop that was about the Course in Miracles, which I was somewhat intrigued with. I had some friends that were involved with it. So I went to this workshop, and I met a guy there, and he said, I just want to introduce you to a man by the name of Arnold Patton who wrote a book, You Can Have It All. He says, I'm going to give you this little audio tape. It'll explain what it's all about. And I started listening to the tape, and it was a big aha for me. And in that tape, I must have listened to it over 100 times because it was so influential to me. He said, what will change your life is if you believe, or you don't even have to believe it, if you try living your life like everything that happens to you, you've created. You create it all. He said, even if you would go down in an airplane, he said, at some level, you would have created that. I mean, that's the extreme. And you could argue with that all you want, but he said, it doesn't matter. He said, try it for 1 month and see how it would change your life. Every single thing that happens to you, you created at some level. And I started doing that.
Take responsibility, basically.
Yeah. I'm responsible for my world. I'm responsible for my life. And I started doing that. Arnold Patton actually came to Kansas City, and I got to go to a 2-day seminar with him. And in that seminar, we formed some support groups where a bunch of us got together on a weekly basis, and we would do things like the perfect day scenario. In other words, think about what your perfect day would look like. And, and it would vary. Some days you might wish that you could just stay home in bed all day because you didn't feel good. But one of mine was living in the mountains in a cool cabin by a lake and doing those kind of things. Okay, let's pause here because somebody's coming in.